Unfortunately, there were a number of alien species in Star Wars that gluttonous colonizers like the Hutts and humanocentric tyrants like the Empire loved to subjugate. We've covered some of these species and their hardships before, like our video on the Wookiees and the various factions that exploited Kashyyyk throughout the ages. Today, however, we're focusing on the Twi'leks, who also got a rather short and pointy end of the stick during the Clone Wars. Their homeworld of Ryloth was invaded early in the war, subjugated brutally, then ruled over by the iron fist of the Empire. But Ryloth did not go quietly into the good night. Like any good story of resistance fighters, the Twi'leks of Ryloth fought back, and they fought hard. And most of that fight was down to the efforts of a single man, Cham Syndulla. But like with any figure of history, there was more to this local legend than just his heroic deeds. In today's video, we're going to take a closer look at the Twi'lek resistance leader and peel back his many layers for good or bad.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
In one short word, what Cham was to his people was a hero. In the days before the Clone Wars, he was a political figure who openly opposed Orn Frita, Ryloth's senator. He spoke openly against what he recognized as the Galactic Republic's creeping corruption problem, and particularly against Senator Tar's treatment of Ryloth, its people, and its resources. At the time, his views earned him the title of political radical and a danger to the state, someone out to garner power for himself. In truth, however, all Syndulla wanted was to protect his homeworld and his people. History proved him right when the Galactic Republic's slow corrosion of democracy led to the Separatist crisis, then the Clone Wars, and in 22 BBY, the Techno Union led a droid army to Ryloth and took it by force. In response, Cham Syndulla rose to the occasion and turned his political movement into a resistance movement known as the Twi'lek Resistance. Their main objective was to retake their homeworld, and the Galactic Republic soon sent aid. We're sure you're all familiar with General Imagundi and Captain Keeley's last stand on Ryloth. That fight was fairly characteristic of the early days of the Resistance, difficulty resupplying and feeding the soldiers and refugees. With the Separatist blockade around Ryloth, it was increasingly difficult to get food and supplies in for the Resistance fighters, and they lost more and more ground to the droid army. However, thanks to General D and Captain Keeley's sacrifice, they were able to withdraw and live to fight on. Syndulla led his fighters underground, leaving behind the bodies of their companions as the droids cut them down. From their underground bases, they used guerrilla tactics to fight the far superior droid army. When the Republic returned with renewed vigor to help liberate Ryloth, General Windu approached Syndulla to request his aid. But there was a catch. Helping the Republic also meant helping Senator Tar, with whom he'd had a long-standing feud. When the Separatists began bombing Twi'lek villages, however, he decided to put their past behind them. Helping Senator Tar meant helping his people, and at the end of the day, all Syndulla cared about was protecting Ryloth. Albeit reluctantly, Syndulla agreed to help Senator Tar and the Republic, and with great effort, they were able to save as many Twi'lek villages as they could and repel the Separatist forces. Syndulla personally led the charge into Lesu, the capital, and was instrumental in the Separatist defeat. His heroism and pivotal role in the battle earned him the title of Hammer of Ryloth, which we're sure he wore with pride. But his victory was short-lived. Not long after Lesu's liberation, Chancellor Palpatine took the throne as Emperor. Not long after, Ryloth found herself occupied by the Imperial military. Initially, Syndulla tried siding with the Empire, hoping that Ryloth would escape the worst if he and his people cooperated with their occupiers. He tried to convince his people to cooperate, but the Twi'leks resisted regardless. When Cham's own daughter, Hera, became involved with the resistance and implicated, he had no choice but to turn on the Empire and join the rebellion. By 14 BBY, Syndulla was the leader of the Free Ryloth movement. From the Hammer of Ryloth, he was upgraded to the Liberator of Ryloth, and for good reason. Under his leadership, the resistance continuously struck blows against their imperial overlords and Senator Orn Frita, who was little more than an imperial puppet. Using guerrilla tactics to avoid open war with a superior army, they disrupted Ryloth's spice trade, launched raids on depots, and intercepted shipments of weapons and supplies. And they were damn good at it. Syndulla's tactics were so brilliant that the Empire taught and studied them at the Imperial Academy on Mandalore. Despite careful scrutiny, the Imperials never quite managed to best him. But Cham Syndulla wasn't just brilliant, he was also ambitious, and the combination of the two allowed him to take on targets much grander than a planet-locked resistance movement would have normally been able to handle. His tactical genius and determination to stick it to the Sith man were best seen when analysing his plan to kill the Emperor and Vader. During this time, Syndulla had an agreement with Belcor Dre, a colonel in the Imperial Army who had it out for his commanding officer. Dre provided Syndulla with inside intel, and in return, Syndulla promised to make life hell for his commander. So, when intel came that Darth Sidious and Vader were coming to Ryloth, Syndulla made it his mission to cut off the head of the Imperial Snake in one fell swoop. Against all odds, the mission was almost a success. Anticipating the Sith's arrival on the Imperial Star Destroyer Perilous, Cham prepared a welcome party of space mines and CIS vulture droids. When the Perilous entered the Ryloth system, the first wave of mines damaged it. Vader set out a squadron of starfighters to assess the damage, but they were helpless to stop the second wave of mines from taking out the Perilous's shields, leaving it vulnerable to the vulture droids that swooped in and nearly finished the job. But Syndulla's plan didn't end there. He had arranged in advance for his resistance fighters to be part of the military's cleanup crew. They were sent up to the Perilous to help repair the ship, but instead of repairing it, they rigged it to blow. Thanks to plot armor, Sidious and Vader escaped the Star Destroyer in time before the vessel exploded and managed to crash land on Ryloth. Subsequent attempts to find and kill them failed, but even with their ultimate failure, Syndulla and the Resistance still managed to achieve an impressive victory. And it wasn't Cham's only brilliant moment during the war. So why is he so disliked? If you've ever watched the Clone Wars or Rebels, you'd be familiar with the general disdain people have for Cham. In our opinion, that's because at the end of the day, he was more like Saw Gerrera than most people are comfortable with. We've talked before about how Saw Gerrera was an extremist, but one who did what he had to wage total war against a merciless, totalitarian enemy. Cham Syndulla fought the same enemy, but he didn't wage the same war. In fact, in many ways, we think he was objectively worse than Saw Gerrera. To begin with, all Cham Syndulla cared about was Ryloth. In fact, early during the Free Ryloth movement's life, he managed to alienate his daughter Hera because he was focused only on their homeworld, whereas Hera believed in a free galaxy. Cham, who had been incredibly skeptical of Republic aid during the Clone Wars, outright didn't care what happened to the rest of the galaxy as long as Ryloth was safe. His daughter, who recognized how small-minded that view was, left to start her own rebel cell, one which admittedly succeeded far more than her father's ever did. This is a main point where we think Saw was a better man. He fought for the galaxy equally, wanting all peoples to be free of the Empire's tyranny. Cham only cared about the Twi'leks, and it severely limited what he could give to the galaxy. Loosely connected to this is his blatant disregard for anything other than the fight. Like Saw, Cham gave up on everything good in life in favor of defeating the Empire. He dedicated himself to the cause and undeniably sacrificed nearly 2 decades of his life to it. The difference is that, where Saw had already lost everything that had mattered to him, Cham hadn't. His wife was killed during the Resistance, but Cham still had a daughter under 10 whom he essentially pushed away in favor of leading the Resistance. Sacrifice is a noble thing to do, but it becomes far less admirable when innocent children are made to suffer in the name of a good cause. But his ability to sacrifice his relationship with his daughter, his young child who had already lost her mother, was indicative of Cham's general character. He was cold. Cham was a man who would do anything and everything to achieve his ultimate goal. Time and again, we've seen him make morally questionable or deplorable things to get what he wanted, from blackmailing Belkor Dre to betraying Hera and her rebel cell after using them to get where he needed to go. The latter is particularly deplorable when you consider that, at the time, his adult daughter, leader of Phoenix Squadron, had reached out to team up with the Free Ryloth movement on a mission to serve the Rebel Alliance. Despite the chance at reconciliation, Cham still chose to betray her and serve Ryloth over the entire alliance. In the end, he did reconcile with his daughter after being reminded of the value of family, but an epiphany at the end doesn't undo a life of cold determination to end the Empire. At the end of the day, Cham was a hero to Ryloth. He did everything he had to in order to liberate his people, and he deserves recognition for his sacrifice and tactical genius. But neither of those overwrite the consequence of his choices. But what do you think? Are we being too harsh on him? Are there any other key figures of the Resistance you'd like us to take a closer look at? Let us know all that and more in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.